Hey, we have another solitary story glittered with Flux appeal. While I was definitely happier with this week's episode than the last, in fact, I'd say there were moments that actually had me hooked. There were characters I liked, intense action sequences, interesting visuals, and wait. Am I dreaming right now? Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
How are you feeling this week, Harry?
Actually not bad. Definitely improved from last week.
Oh yes, you're in a terrible state. There won't be any trouble from you this week, I trust. Can you keep your heart rate down and stress levels to a minimum?
Fuck no. I could be wrong, but I had a sixth sense about this episode. I believe that Maxine Alderton, writer of Series 12's The Haunting of Villa Diodati and co-writer of this episode, was largely responsible for the angel-related shenanigans with Chibnall writing those batshit interludes. Let's start with the main bulk and the stuff that actually had my full undivided attention this week. Rewinding the clock a little, Claire's scene in the Halloween apocalypse appears on the surface as though she had met the Doctor before, but in reality the mere fact of her being an angel seems to allow her a full bank of knowledge about the Doctor, what she looks like, where they'd meet, etc. Perhaps I was yearning for something along the lines of River Song, meeting in the wrong order, but the episode doesn't feel the need to retread that particular path this week. I appreciated that Village of the Angels tied up exactly why she felt the need to remind herself of what to do when an angel appears.
Don't blink. If you blink, they'll move.
Claire had a vision before meeting the Doctor from an angel preparing herself for her eventual transportation back to 1965. It's a shame the story couldn't flesh out how Claire went from Liverpool in 1965 to the village in 1967, but the immediacy of the threat the angels posed pushed all that stuff to the back of my mind. We only really learn that she's not getting a psychological but a psychic evaluation. The confusion as to whether she's actually being treated or is just being manipulated by a quack sets this episode off rather effectively. It's just a shame a weird voice effect was played over Claire's voice at the start here and thankfully never appears again. The character Jericho kept me interested above all others though, taking pride in his studies that have understandably been thrown aside by academia. He admits to his shortcomings as a practitioner, showing that he's kind. Despite this, the pursuit of his work seems to extend beyond human safety and well-being, a darker side to him that's flirted with too. Tied in with his time as a soldier in World War II, it makes sense that he would have a rather bipolar personality like this. It kept me assured that he would be a good asset in keeping the Doctor and Claire alive with all the weird things going on in the story. Meanwhile, the gang are being terrorized by an angel who took over the TARDIS at the end of the last episode. Just rounding off what I said last week, I think the Doc needs a serious rethink when it comes to TARDIS security. Crystal beings can take over it with a snap of their fingers, she leaves the door unlocked for any old body to get in, and even the companions could probably do with a bit of angel antivirus for their phones if this sort of bullshit can happen. Despite literally telling the gang how to deal with weeping angels at the end of the last episode, she felt the need to do exactly the same thing after the title sequence of this episode.
Don't blink. Keep your eyes on the angel. Both of you, keep your eyes on the angel. Don't blink.
It seemed even more pointless giving this instruction, seeing as the TARDIS lights were flashing on and off, making it move regardless of blinks. I was kinda hoping the angel would simply zap them back to 1967, adding additional tension throughout the episode, knowing they would actually be trapped in the past. It might have also removed the need for this silly moment with the Doctor putting two cables together.
It worked. Of course it worked.
But then I have to remember individual angels can transport you back in time with varying degrees, and we wouldn't have had that fantastic moment with the Granty and Grunkle using the TARDIS phone. Truly though, I think they were just trying to milk this line to maximize Twitter hype.
The angel has the TARDIS. The angel has the controls. The angel has the TARDIS.
The angels also sound like they're stepping on plates like it's nobody's business in this episode. But having heard it enough times previously in the series, I just accepted it as something that hopefully won't grace my blessed eardrums after this era is over. The episode finally got the ball rolling with the Doctor's sonic screwdriver burning a hole in her pocket and was suddenly cold again. This magically led her to Claire in the middle of her psychic evaluation. Despite the rather convenient detour away from her companions, I did appreciate the line before her entrance.
What did I say?
Got it all recorded. It was a little alarming.
Not as alarming as the readings that have set my Sonic off.
You start getting the impression that this Jericho character is closer to a parapsychologist than somebody running CBT sessions. I thought it was great that we got this information from the Doctor's psychic paper, which is not only very fitting, but wasn't spelled out to us, seeing as Jericho called Claire his percipient, not his patient. She is then seen in his bathroom washing herself over, and I've got to commend the set designers and camera operators for this super smooth shot of her seeing herself with angel wings. It did give me bad memories of that episode where another famous Who villain appeared on another woman's back, and I'm not sure I'd say the wings themselves looked exactly like they were made of stone. Maybe if they'd appeared heavy for Claire to carry, it might have made the punch of this little moment a bit more convincing. The Doctor and Jericho find the angels had lobbed a rock at his house. It leads the pair to finding a whole bunch of them outside, and a full-on siege of the house then commences, which had quite a few fun moments.
Are they really ringing the doorbell?
It's a very nice sounding doorbell.
With the Doctor pulling a tiny camera out of her pockets and somehow linking that up to an old 60s TV. After 2 years of holding out in the 60s, Claire still held on to this printed out screenshot of a news article about the village. Her psychic episodes also made her draw in as much detail as Mary Seacole, one of which the Doctor took and tore up and threw into the fireplace. Magically, the pieces of torn paper then reassembled themselves so we could have this big scary moment with a flaming angel. Claire is then confirmed as having an angel inside her, like Amy did 11 years prior, except this time she's a special angel that all the other angels have it out for. We got to see Jericho's fervent addiction to research in this scene as well, insisting on recording the pair's polygraphs whilst the Doctor was inside Claire's mind. Jericho's lack of skepticism towards the Doctor's intent was commendable, knowing what he saw on the Doctor's psychic paper, lapping it all up with childlike excitement. We then got to see one of the coolest looking locations ever utilised in the show for a standoff between the Doctor and the Claire Angel. The effects are so good, I honestly can't tell if this is an actual place where the tides part Moses style, or if they're simply spliced together with 2 shots of the pair in front of the tide to give it a mirror-like quality. Why it changes from sand to rocks from one moment to the next, though, is anybody's guess. The almost grayscale shots also add to the idea of this being inside the mind of somebody who is being controlled by an angel, making this line,
You hunted her down, and now you're living inside her, corrupting what she sees, corrupting who she thinks she is. This is me serving you notice. I want you out of here now.
all the more poignant. Unfortunately, they reveal that the other angels aren't simply angels, but angels of the Division.
I was having such a nice day.
They strike a deal that Claire will be released from the Angels' hold in exchange for protection against the Division Angels. I think it's a shame they couldn't have made these Agent Angels look a little different to mark this difference, instead of it just being solely delivered through dialogue. Jericho, meanwhile, had been watching the Angels, supposedly. Looks like he was more concerned with the goddamn polygraph right here. Apparently they needed an excuse for Jericho to not blink throughout the entire duration of this 2-minute long conversation with an angel on his TV, so they just made it flicker instead. You can tell just how difficult it is to not blink for prolonged periods of time in the episode Blink when you see Larry really trying not to blink. A similar thing could have been done here, but instead Jericho actually blinks whilst watching an angel and nothing on the screen changes. It seems like the TV goes on the blink ha ha ha, so our character didn't need to struggle in such a way, rambling on about his pride as a soldier, removing any and all tension from this conversation. Once again, it falls on the writer's decision to make this angel talk. We'll talk about that more later. The Doctor and Claire reawaken and need a quick exit. Conveniently, the layout of the house is just stuck onto a wall in the basement, so the Doctor was able to find a tunnel. For some reason, weeping angels can snarl like lions now. And honestly, this little segment wasn't bad. It kept up the intensity fairly well, and the writers used old tricks to lock angels together. I think it's a shame that it had to be interrupted in the middle of it though for a segment with Yaz, Peggy and Dan. In fact, the tunnel sequence is interrupted twice just to show off a rather cool bit of special effects. The climax of the Doctor turning her back and not getting zapped is deflated for this very reason. Oh yeah, I've done that thing again where I haven't actually talked about the other sides of the story yet. Best I make a start of it then, don't you think? So right at the start of this episode, the local reverend was having a hard time keeping the peace in the village. He is instructed by a spooky lady to go around counting the gravestones to check if there are more than usual. Apparently he has nothing better to do on a Tuesday evening and actually counts them all before being sent back in time by an angel. I'm not sure what the point of this little exercise was because this character never shows up again in the episode. I might have awarded points had there actually been additional graves thanks to the angels throwing people from the present into the past. Yaz, Dan and the two village idiots are seen looking for Peggy. With Yaz finally utilising some of her police skills in this scene, it was quite interesting seeing the lack of organisation in this search party. It certainly felt like a sign of the times moment having her dismissed right here, but worked well at being more subtle than I'm usually accustomed to in this era of the show. The companions are introduced to them as police officers, so it stands to reason the couple comply with her questions instead of shrugging her off. It's not inconceivable that Grunkle Stan just hated being lumped with his great niece in a, oh, another mouth to feed kind of way, but also somebody who appears to have lived in the village all his life in the 1960s probably has his own backwards ideas about ethnic minorities being on the police force. The companions then awkwardly get zapped back to 1901. The spilled carts, chickens eating breakfast, and Dan having a brief moment of despair created quite an eerie atmosphere. It was a shame Claire spoiled the surprise mere seconds earlier.
Listen to me, it wasn't the first time. It also happened in 1901. Everyone in the village vanished.
Killing the mystery of when exactly the pair were. They then find the missing girl creeping up behind them. She then immediately leads the pair to the edge of the village, despite warning them not to go there.
You have to be careful. You have to stay within the village. You mustn't go beyond the sign.
So instead of keeping this warning purely in the mind to leave a sense of dread, we see the encroaching dissolution of the village in 1901. I thought this to be quite impressive visually, but it was a bit overkill given that the exact same reveal is shown to Grunkle Stan and Granty Mabel in 1967. When the pair were finished gawking, an angel appeared behind them and...
Let's return it to the churchyard. Somebody must have carried it here. Can't be that heavy.
I just loved how this character's priorities changed so rapidly over the course of this episode. Firstly, he is out looking for his great niece, probably because his wife dragged him out of the house kicking and screaming. Then he decides he's going home because he's simply had enough.
I'm going home.
And then seconds afterwards, he decides that he'd rather delay going home to return a mysterious statue that even the priest hadn't seen before today. They wind up having a family reunion with Peggy, and we have one of the most hilariously bad weeping angel scenes ever. So Peggy established in her previous scene that, like Claire, an angel had put thoughts inside her head. Not images, but words. I should mention that generally speaking, I've never liked the idea of the angels talking in any way, shape or form. Allowing them to communicate humanizes them. I find them far scarier when they don't talk. Angel Bob in Flesh and Stone was a stupid idea. Having Claire be another Angel Bob rubs me up the wrong way too, and even Jericho's voice being echoed back to him makes the least sense of all. It seems to conjure tacked on ideas like this one.
Nobody survives it twice.
Which leads to these two stubborn and comically fearless characters having one of the most hilarious death scenes I've ever seen in the show.
How did that...
Not only because of this rule that was pulled out of thin air that being touched by an angel twice literally kills you, but after witnessing the strange events from touching a statue, they go and touch it again. The companions screaming at the top of their lungs was equally hilarious.
Mate! Listen to her!
Don't go past the statue. Do not put your back to it.
And then seeing Yaz with pipette eye drop tears, just what the actual fuck? The three who magically escaped the angel from earlier then go to a part of the field that allows them to see the present day. They have a neat little twist that the mysterious woman who is always seen watching angels just when they are zapping people back in time turns out to be Peggy. It might have made the twist that little more satisfying if her older self was developed more than just being that creepy woman. Peggy even mentions having a teacher who was wrong about history, yet no further connection is made. The focus shifts onto the burial site where a whole bunch of angels are waiting to come alive. I'm not sure if I missed a detail, but I was left wondering where the horde who came to Jericho's house came from, if not from this mass grave. It's not like it really matters though, as everyone comes together to witness the big reveal that the Division angels were after the Doctor, not Claire. This was initially hilarious to me, seeing as in the previous episode the angels appeared as though they had it out for Yaz.
There are angels disrupting your time stream.
But apparently that's no longer the case. I guess it played out to the angels' strength as antagonists, using the Doctor's soft spot for saving people to lure her here, but honestly, I was expecting a bit more enthusiasm from her. Both this episode and the first had the Doctor asking around for information on the Division. Now, she finally gets the chance to meet them and... nothing. Like, yeah, cool, turn the Doctor into an angel, it looks fantastic. This could have been a great ending to the episode right here, but nope. Don't think I hadn't forgotten about the terrifically distracting and pointless segments with Belle, so let's see if they are worth your time and money. Spoilers, they aren't. We start with more of the same from last week.
But since the Flux, there's so much more. Space, and so much less... everything else. I mean, duh.
So Belle travels to another planet that had the Flux rip through it. Neil from the In-Betweeners then shows up.
I'm Namaka, Ost Parves Po.
And I'm glad they picked a comedy actor because this whole scenario was just hilarious.
Quarter of a sun, third of a moon, half a planet.
Have you seen this guy?
No. Brother?
It's just brilliant because this bland, sad piano music is heard in the background and it's totally contrasted with this silly character that's just magically appeared before Belle. Just for a bit of context, this was the planet Vinder and Belle were meant to have their honeymoon. It makes sense for her to come here looking for him, but what doesn't make sense is everything else. I'd firstly like to know why this quadrant in the 21st century is filled with humans. I have to assume budget because no other reason is ever given why this is the case, and I get that Vinder and Belle are unique in some way, but nothing physiologically differentiates those two from everyone else here. Everyone in this smoky city is seen assembled in this little pit looking for safety.
See? Everyone's here.
Social distancing measures actually got written into the story right here.
Leave a gap between you and the next person or it won't take.
And then Azure appeared to take everyone away. I actually didn't mind the way Azure allured them all and acted like a savior here. It was close enough to how I wanted the Ravagers to behave in episode 2. Even the fact Neil was saved but stubbornly refuses to go with Belle was commendable.
I can get you to another safe haven.
Stay away from me.
But ultimately, the whole thing left me quite sour. It had this whole
The call came from across the stars, over and over again. Come to Utopia
vibe as well, the only difference being the Ravagers use humans at the end of the world as hostages, not soldiers. Finally, the credits got interrupted this week. The interruption itself was ruined by the theme music playing with a filter over the top of it. Having said that, I don't know if I would have watched the credits for as long had it not been for this change. It was pretty amazing to me that no explanation as to how exactly Vinder got off his ravaged home planet was ever given. Not to mention that he just happened to find the one guy who spoke to Belle on a planet of undetermined size. I just don't see what the point of sprinkling this episode with this shit was. What would have been the harm in shaving off a few minutes so this episode didn't feel as bloated as War of the Sontarans? Really, if I stood true to this statement though, I shouldn't even be talking about the interludes. But they had just so hilariously nonsensical and actively prevent the story from being enjoyable as a standalone episode. So, did it suck? I'd definitely say it's the strongest episode of the bunch thus far, but it's not quite perfect. It's a shame that it's sprinkled with the stuff that's going to make it age quite badly, i.e. the Flux appeal. Shave away the Vinder and Belle stuff and you might have a watchable episode on your hands. I loved all the psychic Jericho shenanigans, the scenes in Claire's mind, and the general intensity this episode brought to the table. It's certainly atmospheric, but most of the build-ups wound up being short-lived due to the editing. Sometimes the episode would rather force flashing lights onto the viewer instead of of making our characters struggle not to blink, which I think was a bit of a cop-out. Alongside a fair number of irritating moments and possibly one of the worst scenes of all the Angel episodes, I'm still pretty mixed about the episode, with or without interludes. If you enjoyed this review, hit the subscribe button for more videos like them in the future. If you absolutely loved it, please consider supporting the creation of these videos over on my Patreon page. Thanks for watching, see you next week. Piss off, you hissy-wissy. Ugh, itchy nose. Not only has Belle miraculously heard of the passengers before, but also knows that flying flat. Why do I have such an itchy face today? I actually didn't mind the way Azure allured them all and acted like a survivor. What's a survivor? I meant to say savior.